Okay, yes, let's start this little podcast about Drupal Canvas. And I have two guests here. And before I say something wrong, maybe you can introduce yourself rather quickly, Balint and Lauri.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Balint. I work on Drupal Canvas as an engineer. I am the technical lead of the JavaScript code component in Drupal Canvas. And I've been doing this full time since August 2024 as a contractor at Acquia.
I'm Lauri. I'm a senior product manager at Acquia. I'm leading the development of Drupal Canvas. I've been working on this for a couple years, which has been really exciting.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, it's super nice that you took the time to join because, yeah, Drupal Canvas is finally out. It was launched in December 2025. First of all, congratulations on the launch. And I thought it's interesting to go a bit deeper than just the demo. I mean, there was a lot of demos and also presentations and how it worked, etc. But sometimes, yeah, the background infos and the stories behind it is maybe even more interesting. I mean, we met at Drupal events and I saw many webinars and also presentations. I think you can find this content also on YouTube. And yeah, basically what I want to cover in this session here is yeah, what is the strategy? What was the strategy behind it? Why actually Drupal Canvas exists, as well as maybe talk a bit about the tech itself, and then also about the future of Drupal Canvas, if that's fine for you. And maybe let's start with the question. I mean, it was launched now after a long time of development. How was that for you? I mean, it's out now. How does it feel for you?
It's been extremely calm, not at all stressful, very easy.
Do you mean exactly the opposite of that, Balint? I feel like we've had some pretty tough conversations in the last couple of years that we've been working on this.
Yeah, might be. So how was it, Lauri? For real?
It's been a lot of long nights. It's been a lot of tough conversations, a lot of hard problems that we've had to tackle over the I don't know, past couple years since we started. But of course, it's a huge relief having it out, and the response has been very positive so far, which is a huge relief. You never know what kind of feedback you get when you put these things out there, so it's exciting. It's also really exciting to see what people are actually building with it. It's been exciting to see that people are already trying to take it pretty far with what I've seen. There's some big universities, for example, planning to go in production in January already, which is huge for us.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, let's go back to the very beginnings of Drupal Canvas and maybe even before. I mean, Drupal page building has a long story. Obviously, we had many attempts in the Drupal community to solve that. But maybe, Lauri, from your time, you're the product guy behind Drupal Canvas. And how was Drupal Canvas born, the idea of it, and also why now and why not earlier or why not later, etc. So what's the beginning of Drupal Canvas basically?
It all started in 2023. I became a product manager for Drupal core back then, and I started getting into understanding sort of how the existing initiatives that we had back then, how they help our users, so that I understand what are the sort of key pieces that we need to be delivering there just to drive value. And I remember I was trying to schedule conversations with users of Drupal, and I had a good bunch of those, but then every time I went into a conversation, the conversation sort of went away from the topics that I wanted to discuss towards how hard it is to do page building with Drupal, how hard it is to actually build sites, and how much they've had to invest in improving the tools themselves. I went to Dries a few months after that and sort of said that I think there's something into this, that we probably should look into this. And then we did some research specific to this and discovered that it's a huge problem where agencies have invested hundreds of thousands to essentially build their own suite of site building and page building tools themselves. So that's how it all started in the very beginning, and that's how we got the conviction that, hey, we need to do something about this. Obviously, it's not the first attempt to try to solve this problem. We've worked on Layout Builder from before, so a big part of it, once we realized that this is something we need to do, was to understand what is it that we need to do differently from before. And we started by making sure that we are aligned in the beginning, that we on the priority, on the urgency of this. We made sure that we have sufficient resourcing for this, because we realized that this is a costly project that we are getting into, that we won't succeed at this unless we get a sufficient amount of funding on this. So when I started having conversations with Acquia about this in the beginning, it was clear that, okay, we shouldn't go with sort of a half-assed approach to this where we have a couple engineers working on this, because it's going to take us way too long and we're not going to come up with something that is that allows us to actually leapfrog with the solution that we come up with. So we created a strategy in the very beginning that would allow us to get the funding, that allows to build a solution that allows us to leapfrog other solutions on a timeline that is reasonable, because of if it takes long enough, then we'll never manage to actually accomplish the leapfrogging. So there's actually a lot of planning. It was sort of almost a year, or actually it was pretty much exactly a year of planning before we went from actual like discovery to implementation. So it took us a long time, but then obviously from there on, when we had the engineering team start working on this, it was a rapid fire from there on until the release.
I see. So, I mean, I remember you also catched up with me and talked about. I mean, I also run an agency, and I think we had interesting talks about how to page build. And I remember, and you shared a little bit of your vision. And I remember, okay, if that's possible, I don't know how you're going to do that in Drupal, and how this editing should work. And now, 2-3 years later, we have it. So. Just one question I'm curious about. I mean, there is, can we say, almost like a crisis in a CMS market. It's not only within Drupal, but just in general. I mean, there are new players, or there new players came up, like these cheap website builders with very powerful visual editing tools. And okay, Drupal itself and other enterprise CMSs also kind of need to catch up. How was that impacting the strategy of what then became Drupal Canvas? And also, I mean, back then AI was not a big of a topic yet, even though it was on the horizon somehow. And then also in combination with the strategy of Drupal CMS, which was also maybe created that back then. Maybe you can, bring back these different topics together, or how was that it now became actually the product what it is. And obviously, also to say that, I think it's a discussion in the community. Obviously, Drupal Canvas was also built with lots of Acquia resources, and it's built for an Acquia product, which is now, I think, Acquia source in mind. It's open sourced, Drupal Canvas, which is nice, but obviously this is also a little bit of the company strategy of Acquia itself. I'm just curious how you brought that together, and what was the rationale behind it?
Yeah, it's fascinating that when the idea originally of Drupal Canvas, we called it Experience Builder back then, was born, even ChatGPT wasn't out yet back then. So that's how quickly or slowly we've moved in the Drupal space, in the sense that a lot has happened in the AI space since then. So of course it had an impact on what we did. So we had a plan of what capabilities we would want to have on the initial launch of Drupal Canvas. We didn't quite have all of those capabilities, and one of the reasons was because of we dedicated a fair portion of our team to actually work on AI in the middle, because we realized that AI would actually influence this space. And that was a realization that we made earlier last year. It was in the beginning of the year we started finding finding out that that's something that we probably just have to do. And we ended up then building the Drupal Canvas AI with some community members as a result, which we've shown in Dries Note as an for example. In terms of connecting the dots with Drupal CMS and Acquia Source and all of that, Drupal CMS was born around 6 months after the idea of Drupal Canvas was formed. And it was actually, I happened to had a call scheduled with Dries. We were planning for Dries Note Portland back then. And it was actually the night before I realized that we could connect all of the dots that we have using some earlier concepts. And then I called it back then, I think it was Drupal Suite. Everyone hated in that meeting the name Drupal Suite. And everyone was like, this is a great idea, but I absolutely hate the name that you came up with. And then it was probably like a week or 2 weeks that we, with different groups of people, aligned that, hey, is this what we want to do? Everyone was aligned on the idea, but everyone hated the name. And I was like, okay, that's perfect. I didn't love the name either. It was just, because it was like, I was literally sitting by the fire in my living room the night before when I was writing I was doing like a drawing of different bits of how to connect the dots. And so that's how Drupal CMS was born. It was roughly a month before Portland. So we had a month to align and just put together the Dries Note with Dries. Then basically we had another product that we were building within Acquia, which is sort of which was Acquia Source, but it was a different product back then. We basically said that, okay, we want to make sure that now that we've announced Drupal CMS, that we align the product that we're building internally at Acquia, that's aligned with Drupal CMS, because we don't want to be competing with the community. We need to be building on top of it. So we took around 6 months. We continued to build that product, but 6 months we did different kind of planning, research to make sure that we are actually building that product on top of Drupal CMS. And then later in the year, in October, once we had sort of the plans together for how everything would look together, I became a product manager for Acquia Source as well, to start leading Acquia Source towards the vision of integrating it with Drupal Canvas.
I see. So it's, Balint, do you want to add something?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I wanted to respond to two points that you had in your question. First, the crisis of the CMS market because of the affordable and frankly really great cheap website builders, as you refer to them. I think it's the usual case of competition, which is usually good for customers, good for the users. And I think it's fantastic that the CMS market got this competition, because then the customers' eyes were open, and they all of a sudden they saw, wait a second, is this possible? And why can't my CMS do this? And I think this is fantastic, because it kind of forced us, I think force is a strong word here, to realize that we have to provide the same kind of experience. And for those more affordable website builders, I think it was almost an easy problem to solve, because if you're not concerned, because your market is not concerned about capabilities like content uniformity, multilingual capabilities, permissioning, all those hard problems that we have to solve in the CMS land, then I think it's an easy and a solved problem to build something that's very visually appealing. But really the challenge is, how do we bring that to something that is an entire system and framework around content? And I think that we set out to solve with Drupal Canvas, which, and the second point I wanted to refer to is, you said that it's somewhat Acquia's strategy, and it's built for Acquia Source, of course. I think this isn't a direct relationship. It's an indirect one, because Acquia's strategy is not Drupal Canvas, it's Drupal's success. And Drupal Canvas was not built for Acquia Source, it was built for Drupal. And of course, Drupal needs to be successful in order for Acquia Source to be successful. So I think this is the really indirect connection to all of those.
And we can see that from the timeline as well, that Drupal Canvas, Drupal CMS was born before Acquia Source strategy was even there. It was Acquia Source that was forced to align with the strategy that Drupal has, so that we are complementing one another. It was part of the idea before that we need to have a product that extends this. In the beginning, we didn't know how. And the reason was that that's solving the funding part on it. Because if Acquia has a product that depends on it, then that means that we can fund it properly. But we just didn't know how to make it happen at the time that we launched it.
And quite frankly, we could have gotten to 1.0 much earlier if this was only for Acquia Source, because there are a lot of features and a lot of capabilities in Canvas that Acquia Source does not use.
I think it would be fair to say that we would have probably architected the whole product completely differently if it wasn't built for Drupal.
Yeah, and probably would have been able to release towards the end of 2024.
Okay, interesting. You mentioned the resources now many times. I'm just curious how many people worked on Drupal Canvas. Like how many staff were on it, including the community contributions as well. Did you ever kind of calculate that, or is there a number where you can say, okay, actually Drupal Canvas is invested money, that much of money or whatever?
So our team at Acquia we had 13 engineers working on this for quite a while. There's been sort of different contractors coming and going at different points. So the actual number of how many people we've had working on it at times is much larger. Then we have a design team as well. So we have a couple full-time designers working on this. Obviously, a team of 13 needs a fair bit of support. So we have engineering managers, we have product owners, product managers that help keep the team productive. Then we have the community contributors. So we've had contributors at different times, at different capacities supporting us. We've had folks, for example, from Accelerant, full-time working on for more than 6 months, supporting us. So it is a massive effort, and you could say that it's probably been a full-time team of 20 plus for the whole duration, because we've had different people coming and going, and all the people who support making this happen.
Yeah, crazy. It's so nice to see that open source is alive and it works, and it was a significant investment. And I mean, above all, what I liked, and that was something I was missing in the Drupal space, is the actually product thinking as an open source project. I mean, okay, we can talk about the name of Drupal CMS as a product name. Drupal Canvas is kind of another product name, Drupal Core, or the whatever traditional Drupal, or whatever you want to name it. But in the past, when you installed Drupal, you had basically a framework, a blank framework basis, and nobody understands that, right? This is what other tools do much better. Obviously, you can build different things with Drupal, not only websites. I mean, you can build applications, whatever. It's an application framework in the end. And so what I really like to see is this product mindset in mind. And maybe one question around that. I mean, Drupal Canvas now is out. It should become, or is, the new standard of building stuff. But how do you think about that from a product perspective? Because there are use cases where Drupal Canvas does not add value because I don't want a page builder, or how do you integrate that in the whole, let's say, framework strategy of what Drupal is?
So we are keeping Drupal Core as a separate, and Drupal Core doesn't use Drupal Canvas yet. That might never change if we keep Drupal Core as the framework that is designed to cater use cases that are sort of outside of this marketing use case, that then we have a product called Drupal CMS designed to cater for. And Drupal CMS specifically, we want to target at the use case of where you need Drupal Canvas, and it will then provide all of the tools around those use cases. I believe that, at least for the time being, because of Drupal is being used as a framework quite a lot, we will keep them separate. I don't see a lot of benefits in trying to somehow meddle and merge them into two. And in fact, Drupal Core is actually going full speed ahead on actually focusing more on improving the framework mindset and framework capabilities. They are removing these sort of simplified versions of modules that exist in contributed ecosystem. So for example, the search module in Drupal core, we are targeting to remove that from core. And then instead, in future, we might be adding pieces of search API into Drupal core. And that's the idea of Drupal core being foundation that then the contributed ecosystem extends on top of. And then you have Drupal CMS as a product that is easy for users to adopt. I do believe that that's what will lead us to success. I also believe that the fact that we didn't fully realize that we had a framework that we tried to explain as a product, I believe that that's something that actually hurt our adoption because of it led into market confusion about what is the product that we actually have in here.
Also, Drupal CMS is moving towards not really being a singular product, but having many flavors, offering many flavors for customers via site templates. So I can imagine site templates in the future which do not include Drupal Canvas because the use case is not calling for it. But many site templates can leverage a visual page builder tool, and even there might be opportunities for installing Canvas, but not providing it as a very prominent editing tool. But it is an option to go into a more visual editing if that's what desired by the users.
Yeah. One question I have on my mind is, I mean, there was at the Dries node, I think it was in Barcelona, I can't remember, where Dries said maybe what Drupal Canvas is now with the new, let's say, technology behind it, with React-based UI components, etc., will kind of eat out the admin interface from inside out. What is the state on that actually? Is that still kind of a plan that we take concepts, what we learn now from Drupal Canvas, not only from the technology side, also from the UI side? I mean, the Drupal Canvas looks very modern. And let's say the traditional Drupal UI, it's not outdated. It also looks modern. But if you compare it to today's, let's say, standards, you could say it's Drupal Canvas is definitely there, and the traditional Drupal UI not. What's the plan there?
The plan is to slowly move over high value tasks from the existing UI to Canvas. For example, we are looking into building a form builder inside Drupal Canvas. So that's an example where forms are built today outside of Drupal Canvas, but in future it might be done in Canvas. I would imagine that sort of the structure section of Drupal is the first candidate for us to move within Drupal Canvas, and then something like what is under configuration might stay longer within the existing interface because there's just less need for that within those interfaces. Also, anything that just needs visual editing, where you essentially benefit from having a preview of how it looks like in the end user facing site, is a good candidate to be moved in Canvas.
All right. I mean, maybe we can also switch now to more the technical side of things. So building a page builder, which is modern and nice looking, also needs maybe changing the technology. And maybe you can talk a little bit about it. I mean, I remember the very early versions, and I think there was a lot of try and error also on how to basically connect that with the concepts of Drupal. Maybe you can tell a little bit about it, how you went on and what were your learnings, and maybe also you went in one way and you throw away everything. What are the stories behind the technology decisions and also exciting things? I mean, you built basically a compiler of React components. Maybe you can tell about it, how it evolved during development.
I think we should start with how we built the UI, and I was actually not part of that team yet. I already knew that I wanted to become part of that team, but how did we land on React, Lauri, and the approach?
So, in the spring of 2024, that was around that was right before Portland. We did some cruciating weeks of planning for Canvas. We essentially went through all of the requirements, everything that we would want to build with the engineering team so that they understand what is it that we have to build. So we were essentially on Zoom calls for basically 8 to 10 hours every day for a month. And I think that's been referred within the team bonding through trauma. So that's how we sort of became a team back then, because of we all had to go through that traumatic event of being on calls for such a long time for so many days in a row. We ended up creating this massive Google document with sort of architecture plans for almost every feature, including features that are not even built yet in Drupal Canvas. And then basically after we had gone to that level of detail on all of the features, we had one call where we basically discussed, like, how are we going to build this? Are we going to use a framework? Which framework are we going to use? And probably within 45 minutes, we had decided that basically the only logical choice is to go with React. Reasoning being that that's where our talent is. So that's the talent that we have available to work on this. That's where basically all of the competing tools have been built with React, which means that allows us to take influence from competing solutions, including open source ones. And that's where also all of the libraries that help building something like this exist. So it was actually surprisingly quick decision in the grand scheme of things. It felt like, because we've been on these calls for a month where we all understand what is it that we're getting into now in such detail, that it was easy to then conclude at that point that, hey, we're going to build this with React. And I don't think it was really a question of, should we go with something like HTMX, where it's more a server-side driven, versus React, where it's more client-side driven. So those were sort of the choices that we were considering back then.
But so HTMX was also in discussion back then?
I don't remember if it was HTMX or Ajax. I think HTMX was already part of the discussion back then. It was discussed at least a little bit later if it wasn't part of the initial discussion. But it was definitely a very conceptual discussion of whether it should be driven by server side and then enhanced with JavaScript versus a client side state and client side owning all of that, and then server is just feeding and storing the data in there.
Yeah, I think it was a very good decision to go with React, not only because it's the biggest framework, front-end framework. As you mentioned, talent is there. You could argue about several things. I mean, every framework has ups and downsides. I was a bit confused when it was first announced, because Project Browser is built in Svelte, and I think it still is. So now we have like many different front-end frameworks within one product. Okay, I mean, we can change that in the future, migrate that over to React. One question, did you also reach out to the React team and say, okay, actually, we are considering React to become part of another big open source project? Or there was no exchange, or just curious?
There was actually an exchange that happened already even before COVID. I don't remember. It was probably like 2018, because we had the JavaScript framework conversations back then. And it's around the time that there were some licensing concerns over React. So we did have some conversations back then on what are the expectations from Drupal's perspective to be able to adopt React. So we had sort of paved the way already back then for using React, because of all of the work that went into selecting a framework back then. There was some consideration given to Svelte as well, because there was a realization that we have Project Browser that is being built with Svelte, but it was basically decided that it would hurt us on the long way more if we went with Svelte for this instead, even though it causes some of that duplication or misalignment with some of the existing technology we have.
Which of course, it's not ideal, but just because a framework was chosen for something previously, which has almost incomparably smaller scale and scope, compared to Canvas. I think that doesn't mean that we need to use the same kind of framework. Now, it's a good question whether we need to rectify that at one point and sort of move away from this fragmentation. But that's a different discussion. I think for Canvas, React and the ecosystem and the maturity of this ecosystem was a really great choice.
Yeah, and also I think it's important to mention that, I mean, there was one Reddit comment that, oh, now I also need to learn React to actually build a Drupal site, and that's not correct. You can, it's optional, right? And actually, Drupal Canvas as a product within Drupal is built on React, but you don't have to touch React. I think.
Yeah. So I think it's it's important to clear the line. There is the Drupal Canvas UI and the Drupal Canvas app itself. It is built with React. So if you would like to contribute to Drupal Canvas, if you would like to develop Drupal Canvas itself, and you're interested in the UI part, then yes, you do need to learn some React in order to be successful with it. And also, Drupal Canvas itself provides the code components feature, the JavaScript code components feature, which also happens to be implemented in React. The two things don't necessarily have to connect. In fact, we even had some early discussions about, we haven't prioritized it, but we started with React, but we can support other frameworks and other techniques as well, or in the future if we decide to invest our time in there. But when it came to this new, it's the technical term here is component source. So of course, Drupal Canvas itself gives you this page builder UI, but how do you actually create components that your customers, your users can drag onto the page and work with them, which is outside of the scope of Drupal Canvas. It's the responsibility of themes and modules to provide single directory components, or we still support Drupal blocks when you need to execute PHP logic within your components. But we were looking for providing a new way to author those. SDC, single directory components, need to be authored in Twig. And one of the reasons for us looking into the code components and providing this new component source was this desire to tap into the vast front-end ecosystem of JavaScript. And when it comes to that, React is the first choice. For many of the same reasons why we chose React for building the UI, we chose React to be the first implementation of JavaScript code components, this new component source within Canvas. So if you are thinking about building front end for Drupal Canvas, building your front end components for Drupal Canvas for your users to use, then JavaScript and React is one of the options, but it's not the only option. You can still build with single directory components, which is a standard Drupal tool.
I mean, you're referring to also Canvas supporting other front-end frameworks. I'm actually not sure if Astro Islands it's built on Astro Islands, or you basically copied the concept, or technically are using the Astro Island concept.
We are using directly Astro's implementation of Astro Islands, and that is our way to, the technical term is hydrating. Hydrating means we need to make those components available in the browser. We need to render them in the browser. So for the hydration technique, we chose the Astro Island implementation. And you can think about it as simple placeholders in your markup. And then on top of that, on top of many of those placeholders, we initiate the Astro Island hydration logic, and that understands where components need to be mounted in your DOM, and that's how we render the React components. And yes, I refer to being able to support other frameworks potentially, and Astro Islands might give us this opportunity, because Astro can hydrate many front-end frameworks, many UI frameworks. So that was also one of the reasons why we picked Astro back then. So again, we'll see when the time is right to invest in introducing another framework. So far, the community has been very happy with React, and of course, there are people who would like to use Vue.js or something else. Well, there are already solutions for that. So Wolfgang Ziegler, Fago, created, I think the module's name is external JavaScript XJS, something like that. I'm blanking on the name, but it actually introduces a new component source in Canvas because it's pluggable. It is not a public API yet, but Wolfgang is working with the Canvas team very closely to develop his component source plugin, and that allows us to use Vue.js or any other JavaScript frameworks.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the critical innovations in the Drupal ecosystem, that we have now the ability to bring in all this React talent. And actually they like to build React components. They like to build the whole chain of creating these elements, and now you can plug it into Drupal, right? In the past, you had to basically build headless solutions. I'm a headless fan, but it adds maybe a little bit of complexity if you are not aware of it. But now we can bring in all these thousands of developers and actually make it compatible with Drupal as a platform. And I think this is a big deal, I think, in adopting Drupal as a solution, right?
Yes, and let me react to something you said. I am also a headless fan. I still like it. I still like this idea of compartmentalizing your systems when it makes sense. And there are many use cases when it makes sense. And to me, what I'm personally most excited about when it comes to Canvas is that you can go headless and still use Canvas to edit your content using the exact same components as your decoupled framework uses. Your decoupled React application, currently React, of course, it's what we support right now officially. You can share the components between Canvas and your decoupled app and use Canvas to rearrange those components and build your content that way. And I think that's
something that I think is a critical change in Canvas, is that you can get a developer experience that's similar to headless without actually going headless. Because of one of the wrong reasons to go to headless is just if you have a simple use case, but you want to develop a good developer experience that headless provides. So now with Canvas, you can get it without having to go headless for those wrong reasons.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I mean, a part of React as now kind of the framework building this experience, are there only other technologies you had to kind of build up and invent, or basically how you connect with the Drupal APIs? Maybe there is a story about it. I'm super curious, because I'm sure there was a lot of innovation or tweaking and finding ways around how to leverage what we already have in Drupal and bring it into the front end.
Probably something that is worth mentioning is sort of the seamless transition from Drupal generated forms to React. That's still an evolving topic. There's still aspects of it that could be improved, but the idea is that you can still define your form structure in PHP, and then we just have an alternative way of rendering the PHP defined forms inside React. So all of the forms for components and the entities, they are rendered using Form API, and then we Reactify them on the client side. That's something that was developed in that month of those meetings. We went through multiple concepts of how we could actually do that, including iframing the forms, and then in the end we decided to go with a bit more complex solution so that we can actually implement advanced use cases in future in there.
And also to respect the existing ecosystem. and make sure that we work really well with everything that's already there. And that's what ended up as we call it, the semi-coupled theme engine. That's part of Canvas.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite crazy actually to think about that. I mean, one of the big advantages if you have Drupal is all the forms are for free. You don't have to configure them. There's even field widgets and everything, and you found a way to leverage that and bring that and modernized it. So this is definitely very cool. One thing, a technical thing I'm curious also is about the data structure. I mean, traditionally, Drupal is a very fixed structure. You have content types, dynamic data structure, but so it's not one single body blob like WordPress does it. So there was also some innovation about the data structure. Maybe you can tell about it, how roughly how it works, and also the rationale behind it, because obviously, especially if you're building landing pages, marketing landing pages, it's not a content type, right? And the paragraphs model adds lots of complexity and lots of clicking through. But if you do that, and we did that many years with very structured content, we have all the references and everything is nicely built on the database. We have very good control, and it's also a big benefit. But obviously, if you build single one-off landing pages, this structure doesn't work anymore. Maybe you can tell a little bit about this new data structure and how it evolved also during development.
So, Balint, maybe I'll take the point on how we ended up with the data model that we have today, how we got started, and then maybe you can talk more about what the data model looks like, because I'm not quite up to date on what the latest data model actually is, because it's seen some changes over the years.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to talk to it at the high level. Let's give it a go.
All right. So the data model was sort of one track of discussion for that 1 month of meetings in the beginning. We wanted to get the data model right because we sort of, as part of the research that we did about the existing page builders, we realized that the data model was something that led into people choosing one or another solution because of there was trade-offs between the data models. And we basically figured that we can probably come up with a data model that doesn't have any of those downsides from any of the solutions. So one data model to essentially solve all of the use cases. So we started by defining all of the use cases and sort of requirements that we have, both functional and non-functional requirements. So that was things like we want to support both asymmetric and symmetric translations with our data model, and then some non-functional requirements that, for example, when you are creating revisions, that the version history cannot grow over a certain amount, which is a challenge with some of the solutions. And so we collected all of those requirements in the beginning, and then essentially the engineering, after some weeks of planning, came up with a data model, which back then was essentially the idea of two trees, one tree of field props, and then another tree that stores the actual placement of those components. And then depending on whether you're doing asymmetric or symmetric translations, you could choose to override those one or two of those trees. But Balint, I think that has evolved since then to something slightly different. So maybe you can talk about that.
So at an abstract level, we still have the two trees. One is the actual input one is the actual, it's more logical to start with that. It's the actual layout and how the components are presented on your page. And it's you can think of it as a nested tree. Why nesting? Because of slots. So slots allow you to place components within other components. And imagine a 2-column layout, then your outermost component is going to be the one providing the layout itself, and it would typically have 2 slots. And then maybe those slots can even contain other components that have slots. So this is how we nest the components. So one tree that we store in the database is to represent this kind of structure, and the other tree is to store the inputs that all these components receive. Those are typically the prop values. And the way they are actually stored in the database, that changed a few months ago, and I I can't really talk to the actual fine details of how we're storing those in the database. I know people who are really deeply into that kind of niche have been participating in the conversations. So I don't even try to explain the minutia of that here. I have really great trust in what we ended up with. But I think it's important to call out that we are still working with entities, the same kind of field API as before. And Canvas, when it comes to, you even said, Lucas, the one-off pages, what do we do with those? Well, it's just one field on the entity instance, and that one field stores these two trees that I was and Lauri were talking about. And when it comes to the one of nature, when of course they are kind of the same one of nature in the database, so you may not be able to address fully specific parts of this component tree, but because they are one-off, you don't really have to. But when it comes to entity references, so referring to related articles or taxonomy terms, that structure is still there, and it's still the entity system, and the field API system is still there. So we are not losing that power, and we haven't made any changes to that, of course.
I think
Yeah,
the
that
big
makes
part
sense.
that we learned from before was this, that we need to define the requirements very clearly. I wasn't able to call out all of them. Balint was able to point out one of them, which was the being able to nest different components in a tree that has a depth of more than two. That was one of the requirements. But we started with very clear requirements, and we also said these are the things that we are not doing with the data model. So these are the things that we are not optimizing for, which actually did drive some controversy in the very beginning of the project, because we had to say no to some things, because otherwise we basically couldn't come up with a data model that solved the actual important use cases. So for example, we had to say that this is not actual structured data that we have in here. Even though it has a structure, it is not structured data in the sense that there's no field names that you can call out in here, because it needs to be free form. That's what we are trying to prioritize in here. So that, I think, was the big learning from this. Is just that's an approach that works.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, to be honest, it's actually almost a revolution. We try in the Drupal community and the ecosystem to keep every structure and say, okay, we need to let go if you want to innovate, but still have the consideration of work with the existing entity references, etc., and keep that up. And I think it was a good decision to also let that go in a sense, right? I mean, in the end, it would be just a reinvention of paragraphs in a sense, which is hopefully now a thing of the past. One question I have is related to, I mean, we have content types and fieldable content types, nodes, and but you came up with your own entity, basically, with the page entity, which is Drupal Canvas page. And why not, let's say, Drupal Canvas as a field in a sense, so that you say, okay, we have an existing content type, I add the canvas to it, or maybe it's even possible. I don't know. Or what was the rationale to go with its own entity, basically?
So there's both technical and UX reasons for making it a different from Node. So from UX perspective, the reason was that we did some research. I think this was late 2024 around how people conceive pages versus structured content, and we basically found out that many sites have set up like a free-form page type that they use for several different use cases. So that was something that often content creators sort of perceived different from the rest. It's just sort of thought out practice, and they talked about it very differently from other content types. So that was sort of from UX perspective. We wanted to be able to highlight that this is your page type that doesn't actually necessarily have consistency, doesn't have a clearly defined purpose. You can use it for multiple different types of things. From technical perspective, the reason was that we wanted to drive a very specific UX for that. So that was also sort of driven by UX. But then secondarily also, there could be scenarios where we would actually manage pages differently because if they are different from nature from structured content. For example, we are now looking into concepts of what if we actually allowed you to sort of build static websites with Canvas where actually you're creating pages, then we store the pages in code because basically you can represent them very easily in the form of React because it's just a tree of components that are, if you use code components or Twig, they're just essentially available in your code. So it was to open up scenarios like that we couldn't do if we were using the nodes, because of then essentially we would have to support all sorts of use cases that Node support when we are doing these use cases.
And interestingly, it did start out by just a specifically named field on the article content type, which is what the Drupal core standard profile provides. It was hard coded for many months that there should be a field on that which is named this way, and that's what we were able to support. But we gradually moved toward. And first, we thought we were going to move to full abstraction, just having it as a field, and then make sure that every possible use case is supported. But as the UX research showed, and really just other aspirations that we had, we needed a more controlled environment for that field to live in.
Okay, I see. Yeah, makes sense. You wanted to
It's
add
still
something?
it's still a field though, so we're still leveraging that. It's just.
But it's fieldable now. So basically, I think I asked you, Lauri, months back, if it's possible to add Drupal Canvas to a section of an existing content type. So basically, I have at the upper part, I have, let's say, fixed header with fixed fields, and then I just have one section which is Drupal Canvas, then other fixed fields, and then maybe a second section of Drupal Canvas elements. And as I understand, it's not supported as of now, but maybe it's possible technically to do that.
It's not officially supported, but it's a UI limitation. It's not a data model limitation that we have. So the backend can support it. It's just that on the UI, the experience would be quite rough if we were to try to do something like that today. With some code and customization, you could get an experience like that working today.
But what you're describing is basically you can have a content type, a node, and you place the fields on it that you want, and then you just let Drupal Canvas drive the entire preview and the entire experience if that's working for you. And then you can, we call this content templates in Drupal Canvas. You can use any kind of component on Canvas and map the props of those components to your field values. So that's what content templates do.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so we are almost at the end. So let's maybe the last 10 minutes, let's talk about the future. I mean, now Drupal Canvas 1.0 is out, and I'm sure the roadmap is not finished in a sense that we are feature complete. There are probably lots of ideas. Let's talk about it. What is the vision for what's next with Drupal Canvas? We also have AI. There's this amazing AI demo where you can simply prompt and then it will just reuse the existing contents and build up the page. So what's up? What's coming?
So the big part of the future is I would say Canvas AI was the thing that we sort of added on top of the existing Canvas. It's not AI first product. We are going through sort of a transition where we are embracing AI in a more fundamental way as part of Drupal Canvas for future. And we're specifically looking for the site build use case right now of how do you actually how can we accelerate the creation of a site with Drupal Canvas by using AI. So we have some of those pieces already in there, but there's much more that we can do in regards to that. In terms of
so just to clarify that, in terms of site build, you mean not only generate the page, but actually a full website with, let's say, 10 or even 50 pages?
Yes. So imagine going into Lovable or Replit, these AI builders, or Cursor if you're more tech savvy, and then essentially building up a site with those. So those tools are very good at building a site rapidly in there, and then easily importing that into Canvas from there. So that's the type of experience that we are looking into. Then, of course, there's capabilities that we are adding into just to open up more use cases. So we are looking into multilingual specifically because of that's something that Drupal is strong at, that we have very strong foundations for that already, but we're just missing UI support for being able to do translations in there. So that's also something we're looking into.
Nice. Maybe Balint, you can add something from more technical side. There's some stuff that is coming.
Yeah. So Lauri mentioned this use case. I would say the embracing AI outside in. So how we tap into the fantastic AI coding agents, or not so coding agents, but more user-friendly agents. Lauri already covered that, but maybe just to add, this is what we refer to with the page entity. When Lauri said that we might be able to represent those as sort of static websites. So if we are able to represent an entire page just as a big React component, and we are able to safeguard it so that we can cleanly import and export that from into Canvas, then that opens up the possibility to use the lovables, the replets, the cursors, or whatever tool you prefer to essentially play and build those nice one-off landing pages and just cleanly import them into Canvas. So that's
and they are editable with Canvas, and you can create that,
and also outside. Yeah. And another thing that's coming very, very soon, and this is going to be the foundation of it. It is going to be a starter kit, a starter repository that you can scaffold for yourself using a simple CLI tool. So we have done the Canvas CLI tool before. This is expanding on that. So with a single command, you can scaffold your own repository that's fully configured with every tool that we recommend and every tool that we developed for this exercise to be done. And not only this, but also you don't have to use AI if you don't want to. It's a fully configured storybook instance that you get as a result of scaffolding this repository. ESLint config that's fully custom to Canvas, and make sure that the few things that you need to follow with your React components, I mean, they are standard React components in the end, but there are just a few things that you need to do to make sure that they are still editable in Canvas. So we check for all of those. And the idea is that you can go really fast from having nothing to having a component library presented in Storybook ready for React development with the best tools available configured, and you can cleanly import those to Drupal Canvas. And that's that we are very close to releasing that first starter kit.
Interesting. But if I understand it right, it's only related to the front-end components and not the
Correct.
full Drupal site, right? Okay. You still need a Drupal...
You still need a... Yeah. It's so far, it's going to be just the front-end components. But taking it one step further, we will create tooling to generate full pages that you can import to Canvas as the Canvas page entities.
Yeah, makes sense. Very interesting. All right, so let's finish up. And actually, I'm just curious, maybe also how the web and the CMS space or website building space is evolving. I mean, depending on who you read, some say CMSs are dead. You can everything wipe code. What is your personal opinion and maybe also outlook of the next couple of years for us as web developers in the industry? How will that evolve? Maybe you have some ideas and some thoughts about it.
I do think that CMS as we know it is sort of going to fade away eventually, but organizations still need tools for governance, for collaboration. So someone needs to still provide those tools for them, because they can't have one person, like that doesn't scale enough, even with AI, that one person manages your whole web presence. So tools for collaboration, that essentially what CMS and Drupal have historically provided for big organizations like universities and enterprises are still going to remain relevant. I do think that the CMS must become AI enhanced so that it is about using AI and then collaborating while using AI in that platform. I do think websites themselves also will remain relevant, but I think what will get priority over time is the experience in there, because of you need to essentially, it's not just about the information, but about experiencing the brand online. So you can find information through AI, but then how do you actually make your brand stand out in there is the key.
I definitely agree. I've been thinking about this a lot, and there's one example that really comes to mind for making your brand stand out, and this is going to be not web development related. So I live close to Amsterdam, and in Amsterdam, the most amazing real estate right now are being bought up by Chinese EV companies. So electric cars are big in the Netherlands. They are coming into the Netherlands, and they make a statement by putting their cars into this fantastic locations, like right next to canals, the most expensive real estate you can imagine in Amsterdam. So you can't miss them. It's like it's a representation of their brand. It's very different than getting information about Chinese EVs in a chat box. I think you will need websites to make a statement. You make your brand stand out, as Lauri said. And for the CMSs, there's just one thought I wanted to add. I've seen these questions popping up, like, why are we even building a visual page builder when we are going to compose the content with AI anyway, and AI is going to create those pages? I don't think the user interface is going anywhere. I think AI might be the starting point, or most likely will be the starting point. But then you cannot compare the efficiency of just yourself being able to fine tune the small details you want with the tools you know, and you can intuitively just make those movements. It's not the same as telling a chatbot to make that change. So I think user interfaces will remain very relevant.
It's the craft part of it. Like that's where
Yes.
you add the character to it and create the experience, because the AI is very good at creating generic starting points, and but it doesn't have that character to it. You feel that it's coming from AI, so you still need humans to add the craft to it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to actually see that basically all of the vibe coding tools out there, they've been building these tools out there. They've built tools for collaboration. They've built tools for actually do page building visually in there instead of through AI. So we're sort of just approaching the same problem from two different directions. We have a CMS first. Now we're trying to add the AI use cases to it, and they are adding CMS use cases to their AI-enabled platforms.
All right, interesting. Just one last question: How is your coding experience, or how did it evolve? How do you code these days? What tools do you use?
Lauri has a friend.
I do have a friend. I use AI for a lot of the tasks that I do. I personally advocate for responsible AI use. So obviously, always we have to understand what the AI did. We have to review the output of it, and we have to be able to stand behind it. But it is a huge accelerator to what we can do when it's used the right way.
I use Cursor every day, all of the time. Ever since I joined the Canvas team, pretty much all the code is written in Cursor, and it varies how much I write myself and how much I ask the coding agent to write. And even when the latter happens, I never feel the need to call out in an MR or in a Drupal.org issue that this was authored by AI, because it's still authored by me. Obviously, I review everything and I understand everything, but the velocity that it gives me to produce the stuff and really focus on the things that I'm good at, like coming up with creative solutions and not having to spend time with plumbing everything around it, it's amazing. It's But again, I think what Lauri said, responsible AI use. Obviously, if I have no idea what I'm posting in an MR, that's not cool. That's not going to fly. And well, with the rigorous review process we have, it's not gonna succeed anyway. So I think it's a great accelerator, but you need to know the limits. I think it's if you expect that without the right level of context and the right level of writing your rules and writing your skills, it's going to do good, then I think you are mistaken, and then you can easily jump to the conclusion that no, this is not that useful. Well, then I think it's just a matter of you not putting in the energy to make it useful. So I think it's still work. It's obviously it's not magic. It's still engineering work that you do with it.
It's fascinating how it's changing the process. I'm personally, in terms of like tools I'm using, a lot of different tools. I'm using Cursor, Claude Code, Replit, Lovable, V0 by Vercel. So that depending on the task in hand, I would pick different tools. I'm also using Claude, just without the Claude Code piece, and Google's models as well, Gemini. But an interesting example of something that I've been working on just today actually is adding a CTA to the manage display page of Drupal. Historically, I would have had to go to a designer, to design it. I didn't actually even know exactly what I wanted. I just essentially wanted the CTA. So I went and basically added a prompt to all Lovable, Replit, and V0 with sort of my very vague idea of what I want. And actually, it came up with I would say a blueprint. It wasn't even a design quite yet. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to take the best version of those. I'm going to give it to Cursor and ask it to now implement it for me in Claro. And I believe that I will actually get to a result relatively fast, probably even later today, something that could work. And that's including the design where I didn't have a clear idea on what I wanted to now having a full-on implementation of it.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's exciting times, not only about AI coding assistance, but also with Drupal Canvas. So I would say we stop at this point. Thank you very much for your insights and also a little bit of backstories. And hopefully we can do that again in the future and see what Drupal Canvas 2.0 comes up. Thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks for having us. Bye.